Hey everybody, welcome back to Lois Comics Collectibles, and today we're finally getting Season 2 of Beast Wars out of the way. It took me a while to get everything done, so I apologize for the delay. But at the end of Season 1, we left off with Optimus hurling himself with the alien death ray in a stasis pod, and he was supposed to eject before impact, but Megatron locked him inside so he couldn't, and he was destroyed. It's basically a real quick recap. While the Maximals are reeling from this and sort of coming to terms with their leaders passing, they're hit by a transwarp wave transwarp surge is what they call it. And some of the crew is infused with this energy, and their forms are altered, and they become what they're going to call transmetals. And a transmetal is basically a more metal-looking transformer. They don't look quite as beastie this time when they transform. But each of these new transmetal forms comes with a transportation mode. Rat Trap has a car mode, and Cheetor has two wing-mounted rockets that flip out from the side. At the same time, the Predacons are hit by the same wave, and Pterosaur and Scorponok are destroyed during the process because they fall into the lava that's always in the Predacon base for some reason. But Megatron gets a transmetal form where now he's got little thrusters that flip out the side, and he can fly, and he's got little roller skate feet for, I guess, scooting across the ground. But the Predacons decide to go on the offensive while the Maximals are still reeling from the loss of their leader. And despite all that, the Maximals manage to hold them off this time. And then sometime later, doesn't really say, could be the next day, because of all the upheaval from the Death Ray, they find out that there are some stasis pods out there. There's one that lands in Maximal territory and two that land in Predacon territory. The Maximals discover that theirs is a blank, which means it's just a blank protoform with no spark. So this gives Rhinox an idea, and he returns to base and sends his core consciousness out to the other side of the Matrix for some reason. They don't really tell us at this point. But on the Predacon side of things, they have two stasis pods, and they scramble to claim those for the Predacons. And the interesting thing about these stasis pods is that they're damaged, so the computer programming and the hardware goes all haywire. And these two protoforms, beast modes, are fusions, or they call them fusors, or fusions of two animals. You've got Silverbolt, who is an eagle and a wolf, and Quickstrike, who is a scorpion and a cobra. And when Megatron gets there, they're fighting each other because their data tracks have been damaged, and they have no idea who they are, or to an extent that they're even Transformers. But while they're distracted, Megatron reprograms their activation codes and uses that as a trick to convince them they're Predacons because he knows their activation code. And at the same time, when the Predacons are leaving, Dinobot was out scouting and decides to take this opportunity to sneak into the base while it's understaffed and take back the Golden Disc. Now, some important facts here is that we have learned is that, in Season 1, the Dinobot thought that Megatron had brought him to the wrong planet because the plan was to come to Earth, and Earth doesn't have two moons, which, if you remember in Season 1, Earth has two moons. But now that the alien superweapons have been destroyed, there's only one moon, which means they are in fact on Earth. Which means the Golden Disc contained records of the future, and Dinobot sneaks in to steal back the Golden Disc, and he alludes to his fate, implying, I guess, in a way that Megatron had shown him proof that in the future he would be destroyed, and he's going to deal with the concept of is the future fixed or can I change it? And this is a big character struggle for him throughout the rest of the season. But he takes the Golden Disc and returns to base. Well, now the Predacons outnumber the Maximals 2-1 because they've got two Fusors. And for some reason, Tigertron and Airazor are sent out to scout and are not recalled to defend the ship in this episode. I don't know if they just forgot that they had sent them out or if there's some reason that's not explained. So it's Dinobot, Cheetor, and Rat Trap to defend the base against all the Predacons minus Pterosaur and Scorponok. The added difficulty here is they have to go on the offensive because while Rhinox is unconscious, projecting his subconscious or his core consciousness, or that's what they call, out into the other side of the Matrix, if he's disturbed, he'll go offline. So they not only have to defend the base outnumbered, but they have to go on the offensive, which, to their credit, they do manage to pull off and hold the Preds off long enough for Rhinox to finish whatever he's doing and join the fight. But even with Rhinox's extra firepower, it seems like their fate's sealed. They just can't make up the numerical difference. And when all seems lost, a hole gets blasted out the side of the ship, and it's Optimus in a new transmetal form. He's got a jet board that he can fly on as his flight mode. And he rallies his troops, and they repel the Predacons. And basically what happened, as I understand it, is Rhinox went out into the other side of the Matrix, found Optimus's spark, and then Optimus' spark followed his trail, Rhinox's trail, back to the ship and entered the blank proto form. So that's how we get Optimus back in the season. So the team's back together for the most part. And at this point, they are also victorious because of Silverbolt defects, because he just had this feeling that, like, he wasn't a Predacon, and after seeing how everything went down, Silverbolt, joins the Maximals. And remember, those are called Fusors. So our next sort of arc deals with Dinobot seeing that what Megatron has planned is possible now, and he's tempted by the thought that Megatron's victory is imminent, and also maybe trying to change his own fate. So when Silverbolt and Rat Trap are ambushed, he gets taken back to the Predacon base and basically switches sides. He pledges his loyalty to Megatron. Megatron questions it, and he decides to prove it by a duel or a fight with Quickstrike, who he beats. And the Predacon code says it's the last one standing, but he manages to convince Megatron that Quickstrike's a good soldier. That would be a waste of a useful soldier. But he wants the golden disc that Dinobot stole back. So they make a deal to go out there and get it that day, where in the previous episode, Dinobot had hidden it under a rock. And when he finds it and he gives it back to Megatron, Megatron goes to smack him down, but Rat Trap had recovered and comes to save Dinobot, shoots Megatron, saving Dinobot, and then Dinobot blasts Rat Trap. And of course Rat Trap's confused but figures it out very quick. Dinobot has switched sides, and despite all of this and how he has this concept of Predacon pride and wanting to win, he can't bring himself to kill his former ally. He turns on Megatron. They fight until reinforcements show up. And Rat Trap tells them, hey, he switched sides. They put it to a vote, and they take Dinobot back. I put this in here because the conclusion of this is a great episode that I'm not going to cover. You should go watch it. I know I usually put in the disclaimer. If you don't want to know anything else about the season, probably a good point to stop here. But there is a conclusion to this character struggle that is one of the best episodes in the season. You should go watch it. I'm not going to spoil it in the review. If you're watching this review because you've seen it all, you know what I'm talking about. But you don't want to know anything else about how this concludes? Stop now. So, the next thing that we do, and I'll cover this quickly to try to save time, is the Maximals find out because of the golden disc that Dinobot gave them. Because Dinobot gave them one disc, hid one disc, and then Megatron got the one disc back. So each side has a golden disc. So they figure out that the aliens still have one more weapon on the planet. They send out Tigertron Airazor to find the weapon. The weapon semi-activates. It's like, I guess, the beginning parts of its activation, and takes Tigertron and Airazor in a beam and shoots them off into the void. There's this weird looking thing that's just in space. And the Maximals eventually arrive with the Predacons, And the Predacons have a plan to, because Tarantulas doesn't like the aliens, to contain the alien ship and supposedly destroy them. And when they get there, they're all blasted with a wave that knocks all of the non-transmetal Transformers out for a longer period of time. So when they come to, Tarantulas and Megatron are already at the entrance to the weapon. Since Tarantula's been being a smart aleck saying I'm not under your command, Megatron kicks him out, takes the alien weapon as his own. Okay? So Tarantulas teams up with the Maximals to assault the weapon and uses a virus to cause it to explode when Megatron tries to use the golden disc to send the weapon through space and time to Cybertron to take over the planet. So they foil that plan. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because if I remember correctly, that has some repercussions in Season 3. I could be remembering wrong. That's the only reason I bring this up. Another quick side note to get into is, after this point, we discover that the Maximals also had a secret side mission. There is a protoform on the ship called Protoform X that was part of a Maximal experiment to try to recreate Starscream's Immortal Spark, which, if I remember correctly, for Season 1, they didn't know Starscream's spark was still floating through the cosmos, so I don't know if there's a plot hole there. So if I'm wrong on that, I'm wrong. Either way, they were trying to recreate his Immortal Spark, but the process made the spark insane. But it was super powerful, but labeled too dangerous to be left on Cybertron, so Optimus' ship was to find a barren planet and drop Protoform X onto it. Well, they find Protoform X, and they cause an energon storm that brings him back online because they thought he'd been destroyed. And that adds Rampage. Rampage is a crab tank. Crab with a tank mode, not a crab tank. And he has, no matter what they seem to do to him, he always seems to get back up. I don't think his body per se is immortal, but his spark can't be extinguished. So once they figure that out, all has happened, the Maximals attack Rampage and manage to subdue him and knock him out. And this is the really dumb part of this episode to me. They knock this very dangerous weapon out, and they're like, we got to figure out how to contain him, but they don't bring him back to the ship. They just leave him in a pile of rocks and go home. But Megatron's been watching the whole time and makes an Energon scalpel or whatever, goes out there while they're gone, and cuts out a part of Rampage's spark, because he reveals in the episode that normally if you were to put an Energon blade in contact with a normal spark, it would extinguish the spark. But he cuts out a part of a spark and puts it in this little squeeze cage thing that has, I think, Energon crystals. And when he squeezes it, it causes Rampage extreme amounts of pain. And that's how he keeps him in line, because Rampage pretty much just wants to kill everybody, because he doesn't like the Maximals because they made him and then tried to lock him away. And he kind of doesn't like Predacons, but he'll follow orders for now. So that's in there. That introduces our other new character. Okay, so we come to the final arc of the season. So we find out that basically what Megatron was scheming all along is possible. But so the final arc of the season is, we find out that transwarp surge or wave or whatever you want to call it is actually spreading out through space and time. So the Maximals were planning on, because they knew sooner or later it would reach Cybertron, which would show them like basically where the Maximals were to come and get them. This hits a Predacon satellite first, and there's this group of 3 generals that evidently make the political decisions for the Predacons called the Tripredacus Council. They detect it first and decide they want to take care of Megatron permanently. They don't want any more political repercussions, so they detonate a satellite in the path of the wave so the Maximals don't detect it. And this Tripredacus Council decides to send an operative in this new fancy cloaky ship through space and time to go back, apprehend Megatron. If he's still rogue, kill him, and then kill everyone else. They don't want any witnesses. And this agent is Ravage, which if you're a Gen 1 fan or a Soundwave fan, you know Ravage was the black cassette tape that transformed into the Panther. Give you his backstory real quick. After the Great War, he was given amnesty and rebuilt as a Predacon. So he's kind of bipedal now. So he comes back in time and joins up with the Maximals to take down Megatron. So he attacks the ship, captures Megatron, puts him under arrest. And Megatron's talking to him in his prison, and he says that you don't understand why I'm here. He goes, you're a rogue against everything we stand for. And Megatron reveals that his golden disc is the golden disc they put on the side of the Voyager probe and sent out into space. And Megatron had put a secret message on the disc, basically saying that he knew that transwarp technology or time travel would be possible in the future, and for people to take up his flag. This makes Ravage switch sides, and he lets Megatron free, and they attack the Maximals, but the Maximals manage to repel the attack despite being betrayed. Now, Megatron's grand plan, it is finally revealed, was to come back to Earth way before the Autobots came online on the Ark. If you know anything about Gen 1, evidently the Cybertronians came to Earth on the Ark and were knocked offline for millions of years until a point in the future, which I think is like the 80s, basically whenever the Gen 1 show takes place. So his plan was to come back in time, get the activation codes, go into the Ark, and destroy Optimus Prime. This would cause time to be rewritten, because he is betting on that, well, with Optimus destroyed, Megatron would win the Great War. So when he finally gets in there and takes Optimus Prime out, the Maximals and even the Predacons to some extent, because time is being rewritten, are starting to sort of shimmer out of existence. And all we know is that if this continues the way it is, presumably the Decepticons win the Great War. That could totally lead there to be no Maximals. We don't necessarily know. And that's the end of the season. So it's a really good cliffhanger. It's good to finally see like what the whole plan was. And you know, you can debate time travel, but I don't really like debating time travel in shows because nobody really knows. But just to sort of cover some things real fast in closing here, because I feel like I've rambled on long enough. It's a great season despite being only 13 episodes. I actually had to write way more on this one than I had the other season. The introduction of the Transmetals is a nice change and we get new forms. The Fusors are nice and some new characters, which if you watch it, Silverbolt's, you know, like the knight in shining armor. And I remember these because the Fusors brought on, and the Transmetals too, they brought on a bunch of toys, but I remember the Fusors because they went whole hog with this. There were some weird ones like a Bat Bull, which were like, that's an odd combination, right? And there was another one that was a Hammerhead Shark and a Hawk. But I mean, you know, you pump out toys, and I remember having them as a kid. They were great. But that adds new characters and new possibilities. There's the Code of Hero episode, which brings Dinobot's struggle to its end, where he gets, you know, the resolution of whether his fate is fixed or not. And I think they did a lot of Shakespearean references, because I think the to be or not to be is Shakespearean. It might be Macbeth. I can't remember, but whatever play that was. And I was kind of wondering if some of the other lines he uses throughout the season are not inspired from that. But there's that. That's Code of Hero. That's probably the best episode in the season. And it almost made me tear up all these years later. There's another episode that it's called Transmutate. The general gist of the episode is learning to accept and deal with people and things that are different from us. And I always think it's interesting in shows when we can tackle the idea of someone, whether it's because of mental disabilities, which this one I think was leaning more towards people with mental disabilities that are different than us. But that, or the people that are of different race, just basically people that are different than us, and accepting them for being different, and sometimes what the consequences are if we don't. It's a really good episode. transmutate. And that's one thing I liked. I feel like this episode, or this season, had a few more serious moments. And by it being shorter, we got to the punch at the end with the last 3 episodes covering, Megatron's grand plan. Whereas the first season had a bunch of, I guess you call them filler episodes. But it was just very well done. I enjoyed there were a few comedy bits, still having Waspinator around. It was still fun, but it was kind of nice to be more boom, boom, boom. Here are the main plot points, and we got through it. And the end of the season leaves you on a cliffhanger because you're like, oh, well, he's already blown half of Optimus's face off. Optimus Prime's face off, not Optimus Primal. That gets a little confusing. How are they going to undo this? Which we'll have to wait till season 3. Anyway, guys, if you've watched this show or this season and you've got some comments, leave them in the comment section down below. Let me know what your favorite episode was or who was your favorite character, because they all had their charms to them. Let me know what you think about this season. And man, even talk to me, like, what do you remember playing with as a kid? Do you remember these toys? Did you have them? What were your favorites? Follow us on all the socials down below. I encourage you to go to the WordPress. It'll cover a little more, show a few more, might be able to look at the images a bit longer, and follow us on all the social media, guys. And I'll catch you next week for the next video, whatever it is. And whatever you do, guys, share and love your hobby. I'll see you. Peace.